The Royal Week. I just had to say that.
Okay, hey guys.
Hi, Brian.
Hello.
Oh, really? It's Cole Sanger and it's with us.
Hey, I'm here, aren't
You could change your name, Brian.
I? I'm not gonna mess with Cole's stuff.
All right.
I know.
Four o'clock.
All right.
Okay, let me know when everybody's loaded in.
Go for it.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Lakefront Committee meeting of the Park District of Highland Park on Thursday, June 3rd, 2021 at 4:00 p.m. Roxanne, can you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Kaplan,
Here.
President Ruttenberg,
I am here.
and Vice President Grossberg.
Here. Okay, glad that everybody can make it today. In the interest of those who are attending the meeting today, I am suggesting we move public comment to take place after the presentation. Are any board members opposed to this?
No,
Okay.
not I.
All right. Hearing no opposition, we're going to move right to our Park Avenue updates. Director Smith and Smith Group to present. We're going to first start with the Lakota Group Master Plan. After that, we will take questions from each board commissioner. And then we'll move down to 3B and then 3C, and we'll continue in that manner. So Director Smith, Smith Group, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So as mentioned, I'm going to start with a brief update on the Park Avenue site plan. Staff met today with Lakota Group, who's conducting this plan for us at Park Avenue to review some early concepts for this. And I want to talk a little bit about what those concepts kind of contain. So in the north lot, some things that are being looked at is reconfiguration of parking to allow vehicles to better take advantage of the panoramic views of the lake. We're also looking at improved circulation in that north lot, a beautification with adding landscape, and also creating ADA access to the North Beach. In addition, there is looking at improving and designating pedestrian connections throughout the site in between the North Beach and the South Beach. As far as the North Shore Yacht Club building goes, looking at some minor improvements there, which also include looking into the drainage challenges with the bluff that's right behind the building, and also looking at the patio and deck area. So staff provided some feedback on these early concepts. Lakota Group is going to refine these concepts. They're going to come back with these concepts as well as some opinion of probable costs. And then we're looking to schedule a Park Avenue working group meeting for probably the third week of June. And that's it. Any questions about that?
Commissioner Bernstein,
No questions.
Commissioner Freeman,
No questions.
Commissioner Kaplan,
No questions. Thank you, Jeff.
President Ruttenberg.
No questions.
Neither do I. So now we're going to move to the boat ramp closure.
All right, thank you very much. Can everyone see my screen?
We
Is it
see
part-
the agenda.
No, not yet.
No,
Oh, I'm one click away. Sorry about that. How's that? Can you now see the photo of Park Avenue?
unfortunately, yes.
Thank you very much. So this past Tuesday, it was discovered that a portion of the boat ramp at Park Avenue had failed. The section of this was of concrete panels that had failed. And I'm going to show you a photo in just a second. And what we found is that the area caved in probably with a drop off of 1.5 to 2 feet. And in that area, so the launch was immediately closed. And then what we found was there was a void that had been created under that area. And then eventually the concrete appeared to have given and caved into that area. With that, we also found that there was here, actually, I'm gonna switch to the next picture. We found, so here's the caved in area that has been created. And we found that the adjacent concrete panels right here, there's actually kind of they broke off as well, so you can kind of see under there. And this adds a little perspective. You can see someone standing in here as Parks crew was looking at this. So we have these concrete panels here, a section that failed, and then a section of the panel in front that is also broken. And what we found is this opening here, you can see there's also a void that extends into this entire area. Difficult right now to see how large that void is. We have a void here, and obviously a void was under this area here. And it's assumed at this point that the likely cause of that void was material washing out from under this area through a hole or holes in the breakwater barge wall. So now we are going to, so staff have spent these last couple of days researching any repair options for the ramp. And we've reached out to Paderma, our insurance agency, to look at this. We've also worked closely with Smith Group, who is very familiar with the site and has worked on barge replacement options with us. So we've asked representatives from Smith Group to join us this afternoon to talk a little more about the barge and the boat launch area. So I'd like to introduce Rob Wright, and I'd also like to introduce Mark Wagstaff. And you'll notice, unfortunately, that I did not mention Margaret Boschek because she is no longer with Smith Group. But I will say that Rob Wright is someone who had worked with Margaret on this barge project since the beginning of the project. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to one of you guys.
Thanks, Jeff. We met with Jeff and Brian earlier today to discuss, what's going on and what we found from the pictures of what's going on at your boat launch right there. It's our opinion from what we've seen out there, and with Mark Wagstaff from our Chicago office, he stopped down there on site, that material has been lost underneath that boat launch. And those precast panels have been failed due to repeated loadings at that location. One of the concerns that we kind of thought about at first, that was this a prop wash issue, because there are small spaces in between those panels. Just looking at how the failure is and at the location of the failure and the depths that is at, if those were actually horizontal to where they're supposed to be, it really limits what we would normally see for a prop wash issue. That would normally be from power loading. It would be at the end of the launch, down in deeper water in a situation like this. I was part of the original inspection team that looked at the barge a couple of years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, and helped Margaret prepare a number of the options for the Park District for replacement or rehabilitation of that breakwater that you have. Looking at what's gone on here, it really appears as though that inner wall of the barge is probably as perforated as that exterior wall was when we did the dive inspection 2 years ago. Looking at the concrete that was still able to be walked upon the last time I was down there at the barge, and now it's fully submerged. A lot of that material has left, and that was it appeared to be filled with dredge spoils, which was smaller, 1-inch stone and sand. And that was kind of, that was also confirmed when looking at the as-built drawings that Park District provided for the barge placement. So with the large lake level or high lake levels that we've had, the reduction in the possibility of breaking waves being protected by the barge in that area, it's our belief that we're pulling material into those perforated areas at that interface of the water to about where the concrete is, just below that area. And that has been happening for some time until that repeated loading of those slabs, those precast slabs, gave way and failed, and then dropped into that hole, as we've seen. We discussed a number of potential temporary fixes there, and we don't necessarily believe, at least on our end, that any temporary fix would be necessarily safe or complete. So one of the things that was discussed was, well, can we place stone to try to fill these holes or these voids at this point and allow that boat launch in order to be operable? I think our concern is that with the condition that it is now, we're unsure of how large those voids are, or if we're going to be able to properly place material to shore up those areas from further settlement or cracking and then falling into that hole. In that picture on the right, where the gentleman is standing in the water, Jeff noted that there is a void that then goes up towards the parking area into that slab as well. That slab was a cast in place slab, so that's actually cast concrete. So getting material up underneath that one is even more of a challenge than some of those precast slabs that have failed. The other option that was kind of discussed and thrown out there was, can we place large steel plates on top of this area of failure to cover them up, very similar to what you'd see in a road utility project, which would be the temporary plating that's placed overnight or for a week at a time while concrete's curing. I personally have a couple of concerns about that. The biggest one is that when we're launching a boat in a situation like this, we need to have our rear wheels fully submerged in order to get a boat off of a trailer. So at that point, we're going to have our rear wheels, drive wheels mostly of our tow vehicles are going to be on this steel plate. And while it probably has enough strength to bridge in some of these areas, it definitely is not going to be able to provide the traction needed in order to pull a boat out. We might be able to get a trailer out after we've unloaded, but it will lead to a potentially unsafe condition for trying to retrieve vessels out of that area. From there we discussed, well, then do you attach some sort of grating for traction and things like that? Also, just concerns over what is the stability of that underlying launch right now. We know that it's cracked and we've lost a lot of material in there, but how far does that go? And I don't necessarily know that we have an answer to that unless we do some destructive testing in there, meaning we'd have to pull some more of that up and take a look at exactly how big the void is within that area. So with that, we then started to revisit a number of the options that, the 9 options that we had prepared for the park district for the barge replacement or rehab or, some sort of repair for that. And we discussed number 3, 7, 4, and 9 that we previously, met multiple times with the park district on to see how those would fall within a repair of the boat launch versus just repair/replacement of the barge and the breakwater around there. Mark, do you have anything to add as part of that?
No, I think you've summarized it very well, Rob.
Thanks.
Okay, Jeff, do you have anything to add before we go to questions from the commissioners?
I would like to talk a little bit about staff's recommendation, but we can take questions first if you'd like.
No, go ahead.
Well,
All right, so I'm going to change the slide here.
Jeff, if you're referring to the recommendations regarding this, I would say we might want to take questions first regarding the concrete ramp, because I think your next presentation was more about the barge, correct?
That's correct. I'd be moving on to next steps of a larger feature.
Yeah, then let's wait. Okay. So Commissioner Bernstein, any questions for Smith Group?
Yes. Thanks, Chairman Grossberg. That sounds good. I have to admit I'm frustrated and disappointed of what's transpired down at Park Avenue. It's unfortunate that your predecessor, Margaret, is not on the call, obviously. I mean, I've told this to our executive director that I asked her 8 different times, 8 different ways, did we have time to do a thorough analysis of this before this would fail? And every time she came back positive, saying in a minimum 3 to 5 years. Well, it turns out that wasn't the case due to unforeseen circumstances. So obviously, I'm very disappointed. But that being said, I heard a lot of technical analysis with regard to what's there, but I didn't really hear in plain language what the conclusion is. So I guess in plain language, does this mean that you don't foresee any Band-Aids, any patches that can be done to allow for boating to operate that facility safely in this summer of 2021?
Not in the condition that I'm seeing right now, and I'm having a hard time coming forth with a repair that I would be comfortable with saying that I'm protecting, life and safety at this, right? I just don't know how much of that is fully undermined at this point. And to get in there to determine that will require removal of a number of those planks and then refilling that void and then potentially replacing those planks. So we're looking at more or less pulling it apart to fully see what's going on, and then nearly rebuilding that with new planks in a situation like that. If we just place stone down there, so it's drivable, those stones would be a smaller diameter, like a 3-inch, it would be very rough. The wave action in there and the loading of the boats will move those very readily. We would normally say that tow stone or protection stone at the end of this launch would have to be on the order of 12 inches and not to be able to not be moved by props. So, and we don't want to be driving over 12-inch stones in a situation like this.
Okay, I'm not advocating a specific fix. I'm just asking if there was if you had contemplated any type of Band-Aid solution to allow that. I guess it's a yes or no question, basically.
No, we contemplated what that would be. I don't have a solution that would be a Band-Aid that I would consider to be safe.
And you mentioned certain investigative steps that you would need to do in order to determine the viability of even creating a Band-Aid. How long in time frame would it take for you to analyze this facility to determine whether a Band-Aid is even feasible?
We would have to get an excavator out there to start pulling panels to do that.
So how long? What were we talking about? Days, weeks, months?
We'd have to get a contractor under contract to come down and do that. We'd also have to touch base with the DNR about doing work on that miscellaneous structure that's been permitted. So
it doesn't sound like days.
It could be 3 weeks.
So it's a week to 3 weeks.
Right.
We're talking about, and then a week to 3 weeks to do an analysis of whether a Band-Aid is even possible, and what is the cost of doing that analysis? Ballpark.
Ballpark. I mean, Mark, what do you think? Is it a couple of weeks analysis on that? I mean, it's not a couple of weeks worth, weeks worth of work. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I think the difficulty. So the cost of mobilizing a contractor down there. So you're talking, tens of thousands of dollars, not, a few $100s. By the time you pull all that out, then you need to wait for the sediment to settle out, so that we do have some remote cameras and things that we could look in there a little bit. I think the bigger issue with any sort of Band-Aid is how long does that Band-Aid stay on? And the challenge that we have at the moment is just looking from the photograph, the size of the void. That's a lot of material that has been washed out under, through the barge. And so even if there were a Band-Aid, I don't think it's going to stay on, because the conditions that created the void in the first place are going to remain.
Okay, but I'm not
And
asking you about the
so-
Band-Aid. I'm not asking you about the Band-Aid. I'm going to focus on how do we make the determination whether even a Band-Aid is impractical? Because you're already jumping to the conclusion. I'm actually taking baby steps here, trying to say, what is the process in order to do the analysis to even see if a Band-Aid's possible? And what I'm hearing from you is we're talking about a 1 to 3 week process, and we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Is that an accurate reflection of what you just told me? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Minimum.
Okay, both, a minimum. And then taking to the next step, even if we undertake that 1 to 3 week analysis, and even if we spend those tens of thousands of dollars to determine whether it's feasible to operate the boat launch this year, what I'm hearing from you is that you're not optimistic. They're actually very pessimistic that we're going to get a positive response after that investigation. Is that a correct
Yes.
statement? Okay, I have no other questions.
Thank you, Counselor. Commissioner Freeman.
Well, I think we dug into the heart of what my questions would be, so thank you for that, Cal. I mean, I think what we're going to hear, I'm sure what we're going to hear in a few minutes is, what's the quickest way to get us launching boats out there yet this season? So I still, there's a lot of speculation about, well, we could take a look at this and it might cost money, et cetera. I don't know that I'm ready to jump into looking at option 7 or whatever the case may be for repairs when I don't think I have a clear picture, because I don't have a camera or underwater camera, or we're not pulling things up yet, and haven't really maybe investigated what we can do with this. And this looks worse than I had thought, looking at it, driving down there and looking at it from the other angle. So I'm just trying to absorb all of that right now. So I think we've answered all the questions that can be answered without removing pieces of concrete for me. But this is pretty upsetting. Thank you.
Commissioner Kaplan.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a different tack and try not to be repetitive. But are we better off with what you've seen, just tearing it out and rebuilding it?
The easy answer to that is, or the correct answer is yes. I don't know how old this ramp is off the top of my head right now, looking at it. 25 years on a precast plank. I've ripped out many boat ramps in the Wisconsin area that are 25, 30 years old, replacing precast planks that have gone through their useful life.
Yeah, I believe this was 1981.
Right.
What would the cost approximate? And we know it's not bid out. We're not holding anything. But in your experience, what is the approximate cost if we just wanted to rebuild this, and how long would that take?
Okay, so there's kind of two things associated with that, right? We have a cause that's caused this, so we have to, whatever we do, if we rebuild a ramp, we have to figure out a way to make sure that this does not happen, right? So one of those things is we have to create or stop the path of water flow that allows sediment to be pulled from underneath this ramp back into the barge area. So that is one thing that we have to do, and that's going to require, a cutoff wall of some sort.
Can we tell the cost? I think your colleague just said this is a 40-year-old wall. It was built in 81, and I think one of you guys said that these walls normally have a shelf life of 25 years.
Right. I haven't seen as much undercutting of this at a centralized location like this on one. This failure method is much different than I would expect on a precast plank on a ramp like this. At the center, it's because we've lost all that material. And the question is where is that material gone? It would either be sitting at the end of your ramp, or it has been pulled lakeward into voids at the barge that were discovered landward or water side of that barge, we discovered many areas that were large voids. And it's our belief at this point that a lot of that material has been pulled barge side based on the amount of green water overtopping that I've seen in the pictures for the barge.
Well, let's say, for argument's sake, tomorrow you figured out what caused the failure. What kind of, are we looking at the entire summer being shot if we were to take this out and rebuild it?
Right. So we're looking at a permitting process that can be 3 months at. I would think that the minimum permitting process is 3 months on this. So it would be considered miscellaneous structure on that. And it may or may not qualify as maintenance dredging for any material that's removed from there.
Okay, and the cost to determine the problems, you said would be tens of thousands of dollars?
To nail down exactly where that went, yes. Yeah.
Tens of thousands, could be 3,000, 30,000, 100,000, 200,000.
Well, it's not 100. I can tell you it's not 100,000. If we're thinking about 100,000, we've redesigned the boat launch and the breakwater or whatever decision is made to do with the boat for the breakwater, and it's all part of one thing, right? I'm not saying that this is part of one thing at this point, but
so you're saying that if we did one, we should do the other at the same time?
If you're going to rebuild the launch, you should look at if it can be phased or done at one time.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you. President Ruttenberg.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the presentations and the questions that have come. And if it seemed like Cal was cross-examining you, it's because he was. So, all right. I know that we've not quite gotten to the point that I'd like to get to, though. If we were to say tomorrow, let's not worry about what the cause is, but pull out the entire boat launch ramp and rebuild it, but with a retaining wall on the east side. I know it's something that would have to be designed. What would an estimated cost of doing that be? And I'm just saying, just an estimated cost. So it's in essence building a box with one side on it.
Right. So one of the options, and I apologize for not answering your question immediately with a dollar figure on this. So one of the things that we would do is create a coffer-dam at this location. We already have a sheet pile wall that's on the opposite side next to your boarding dock that you can see in that picture. Mm-hmm. So one of the suggestions that we had is that you place a sheet pile wall against the area of the barge, and then that then turns due west and ties into the existing sheet pile. So now you have a three-sided box, mm-hmm. and you're able to dewater that situation, properly install new concrete in that, which would be cast in place concrete, mm-hmm. proper toe stone. And then at the end of this, you would only just pull the end sheet pile that you then you put in, right? Mm-hmm. You'd leave the sheet pile that was against the existing barge.
Right, which would solve one of the problems that we've all been facing of the failure of the barge, I assume.
Correct. So it kind of solves a couple of things. It's going to solve the failure of the barge that then is allowing some of this material to get pulled through, that is exacerbating the failure and settlement of the launch. It also allows for a construction of the ramp, what we would consider in the dry, which is mm-hmm. a better finished product that you're going to get versus sliding concrete precast ramps down into the water. Mm-hmm. On that. So it does solve a couple of things. It's a constructability as well as it solves a solution of material loss through there.
Okay, but and I know this is
cost-wise, right?
Yes, thank you.
So there we are.
This is ballpark.
I'm throwing out a number. You please cannot hold me to this, but we're looking at probably $250,000 to replace a cast-in-place ramp in a situation like this.
Okay.
And with that, we were going to need some We already have soils work within this area. We got the soils work when we did the original barge assessment 2.5, 3 years ago. So that we already have. So basic services on this, you'd be looking at, about a 10% fee to be looking at that. So I'd be thinking about $25,000 just to be looking at that, plus the survey on top of it. And Mark and I have been already in contact with project partners that have been doing work within the area and have also done the survey for the other areas for the park district to see what it would cost to add that on. And I don't have that number right now.
Okay, no, that's okay. We're using order of magnitude of, let's say, $250,000 to $300,000.
Yeah.
And no matter what we do, it's not going to be an installation that will be accomplished for a boating season of 2021.
Correct.
And when that is done with proper engineering, does it alleviate the problem that, and I think you said this, alleviate the problem caused by the deterioration of the existing barge?
Definitely. That's the biggest thing, that we have to solve the cause of this before we can fix it, or or at least have that. So yes, the sheet pile wall, if that was the route that we went, would alleviate that if there's nothing else done to the barge.
Okay. All right. Those are the only questions I have. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Just building on President Ruttenberg's question, assuming it's 3 months of permitting and everything, and we've got to go ahead. So we're talking about June, July, August. Let's say we could start work Labor Day. Is this feasible to be done in 2021?
Yes.
Yeah.
If we had a contractor.
And that's a big if?
Well, the bidding process, let's just say that we went, if I back this up and say that we had a design done by we'd be looking at having a design in for permitting in July. And then we have a 3-month period of time on that in order to do that. And then you have a bid process. I don't necessarily know exactly how the bid process would work with the park district, but normally we would have a public bid process that would last a minimum of 3 weeks and probably 4 weeks, and then go through at least a 15-day period of time for due diligence and award. So that starts pushing things out a little bit further.
Yeah, that process could likely take up to 2 months on our end.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the end of October, and then it's starting to get risky.
Correct. Right.
And you could not, obviously you have optimal conditions, and starting something like this at the end of October would not be optimal. But if we had decent weather, well, let's just say, how long does the project take to actually build?
I haven't necessarily gone through a construction schedule at this point yet, because we just started talking about this the other day, yesterday. But myself looking at this, it's probably a 6 to 7 week process to install the sheet pile, get it dewatered, and then install. So having said that, if we were to go forth with something like this in order to get in, just do the ramp, I'm not talking about anything else. So this is ramp construction. It would be best to be able to get this thing permitted and final design drawings done as soon as possible. So this can be a bid in late summer, early fall, and then have it set so it is a construction immediately in the spring of 2022. Okay. Then we're going to be able to line up contractors right away that say, oh, look at my first job of the year is already here and it's for the park district. And I'm going to get in there on April 15th when the fisheries allow me to get in there and start work.
Yeah, and hopefully the steel prices will drop by then.
Yeah, I think we all do.
But then you're talking about Memorial Day, right? Where we're actually launching boats against. We're talking, this is 1 year, to be perfectly frank and conservative. We're talking about possibly restarting up our boating program in 1 year. Right? if you're talking about being able to start mid-April, and it's a 6 to 7 week, that throws us right there back where we are right now. Okay. Okay, any other commissioners have anything on boat ramp closure? Hearing nothing.
I
Beth-
do. I do.
Sorry. Go
Okay,
ahead.
sorry about, we talked about the cement launch. We haven't talked about the sand ramp. Can you just tell us if the sand ramp has been negatively impacted and can still be operated?
Dan, do you want to, Dan Voss, do you want to give an update on the sand ramp has been rebuilt, and the sand ramp is still operational. So there's no issue with the sand ramp. Was that your question, Cal, or was it
Yes,
more?
yeah, no, that's it. So you're saying
Yeah.
the sand ramp can be used and
Yes,
operated?
it is. Yes.
Okay,
And Cal can use it to launch his stand-up paddleboard.
yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to head back to Director Smith for barge replacement.
All right, thank you very much. So just following up on the questions that were asked, Rob or Mark, could you comment on this idea of building, replacing just the launch? This is something we actually explored, and it's my understanding that while you would install a sheet pile wall to essentially patch the holes, it doesn't address the current barge breakwater in any way, correct?
Yeah. So what Rob described would allow you to build a new concrete ramp that would, that pathway of the sediment kind of being washed out underneath, that pathway would be closed. You still have the barge breakwater there that is, less than optimal, shall we say. So
And that breakwater still needs to be dealt. I mean, it still needs to be dealt with at some point because it's not providing that protection. And I assume it will only need to diminish the amount of protection that it provides. Or I guess my question is, could we install this breakwater and not worry about the barge? Or does it still need to be dealt with in the future?
yeah, I think the issue with the barge is that it doesn't give you a satisfactory barrier between the waves and the launch. It used to do that, but the lakeside wall has been, has collapsed. The concrete deck is all collapsed into it. All the fill has been washed out. So it doesn't give you the same kind of weight. And particularly it doesn't have, when it was filled with sand and rocks and sediment, it did a fairly good job of absorbing some of that wave energy. But with, now it's just going to come right up to the, up against the west wall of the barge. And so that's not a condition that barge is really designed for. So it's going to deteriorate, it's going to continue to deteriorate. So you might have some years, but it isn't going to give you and you're going to have sort of the overtopping, and it isn't going to give you, you're going to have more time where the launch is not suitable for use because of, waves, but it's also, you have the potential for damage from overtopping and everything else.
All right, thank you. So in early 2020, the Park Avenue Working Group reviewed all of the options that had been provided and went through and made a recommendation. The working group, as I think everyone's aware, is made up of boaters, yacht club, board liaisons, park district staff, and city representatives, including the city manager. And from that process, Concept 7 was selected as the most economical, effective approach for this area. Staff have reviewed, as was mentioned, have reviewed all of these options with Smith Group, and staff are recommending consensus from the Lakefront Committee to seek a proposal from Smith Group to bring us to construction documents for option 7. If we receive that consensus, we would hope to bring that formal proposal to the park board at the next meeting next Tuesday for approval, so that we can move forward with the process of design and permitting for this. And to clarify, we're only looking for a proposal to design and engineer this approach. We would later visit at what point, if at all, it would be constructed.
I'm going to jump in here for just a second. We have a new member of our board, and whereas the 4 of us are used to staring at these kind of documents, I was just wondering if Commissioner Freeman, if you understand what you're looking at, and if you have any questions about that.
I did take a look. I mean, I've revisited the previous meetings, and I'm pretty sure I understand what I see here, and I've asked some of you some questions along the way. I think I've got a grasp of this, but thank you, Terry. You must have seen the look on my face. My glasses on.
I did.
That's actually an excellent point. Not to rehash too much, but Rob, would you mind giving a real quick review of what this is?
Sure. So if we start on the left side of the drawing that we're looking at, we're looking north of a section through there. So we have the addition of a floating boarding dock, because currently right now, the left edge of that would be at the edge of your barge. Okay, so where that arrow is pointing, optional floating dock, that's the edge of your current barge. And a floating dock is positioned there for the courtesy dock. So when water levels do reduce, you're not having to use a step ladder to get out of your boat to get onto the barge, right? So from there, we're going to move lakeward from there, moving out east towards the lake. And we have removed the barge, and in its place, we've placed some, that was be considered some breakwater stone. It's a smaller diameter because we don't need to really reduce the wave impact from a large offshore wave. That is then abuts what we call a concrete caisson, and that is used to kind of as a precast section that is quickly built, that rests on top of the impervious core, which is that trapezoidal portion down below. Currently, right now, you have some breakwater stone, some of it's moved, that's on the front side of that barge, on the lakeward side of the barge. That is then some of that salvage, but then it is supplemented up to the top of the breakwater to then take those impacting waves from Lake Michigan. So that stone comes all the way up to the top. Now, as part of this, we have added a railing on there because you will have a fall potential from the launch side of that caisson, that walkway out there. That exceeds 3 feet down to a hard surface or 30 inches. So we would definitely need to add that to meet some coding from code requirements for guarding for fall protection.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Commissioner Bernstein.
I always go first. This is actually for Director Smith. So it's my recollection is that, and President Ruttenberg and I participated in those meetings with the yacht club representatives of the yacht club, the boaters, the city. That we set, I don't say settled, but we recommended this option number 7, concept 7, to the park board. And then what happened after we did that?
I'm sorry, that's a question for me?
Yes. My recollection is that the park board heard about it, but then we referred it to create a funding mechanism or model for this, for the installation of the structure, and then COVID hit and everything screeched to a halt. Is that accurate?
I would agree that the funding has always been the concern here, and You're correct. We were addressing this in early 2020 when COVID hit. Unfortunately, it didn't receive as much attention.
Okay, so now we're basically dusting off what was the consensus of the working group from 2019 into 2020, and this is what we're basically saying. This is what's being re-recommended to be considered for this facility.
That's correct, and we are asking to proceed with at least the first step of design and engineering, seeing that we have had a significant change at the boat launch area.
Okay, and so this is a question for Director Romes. Where are we with coming up with the funding model for this facility? What's the status of that?
Well, we have a funding model for this facility. It hasn't been presented. It was intended to be presented. I think it was probably March 23rd, and we closed down March 13th. So that funding model was never presented. And since that time, we've approved the Lakefront master plan, and then we engaged with Lakota Group on the site master plan. So we haven't readdressed that funding model, which is just a model. It's not a funding plan. It's a model for how it can be funded. And so what we're doing right now is taking a relook at that funding model, as well as looking at our current capital funds available, as well as our funding model for the next 10 years with other projects, and preparing that information to share with a future finance committee meeting.
So is, just refresh me, because again, my memory is not as good as it used to be. Is the funds for this concept 7, is it in the 5-year capital improvement plan?
Currently, it is not.
And is any contribution on behalf of the Park District in any green print planning or anything like that allocated?
Not it. So in the Lakefront master plan, there is expenses identified, but not allocated in any formal board approved capital plan. So it's identified, but not allocated, or does that make sense?
So I understand it's based on what our existing, the Park District's existing 5-year capital improvement plan and the master planning, is that we still haven't carved out of any of those 2 plans a funding mechanism to implement the construction of Concept 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what's the timetable for doing that?
Well, now that we are being put into a position where obviously we're in more of an emergency state, we plan to make a presentation like I said, at the upcoming finance committee meeting, and we can talk about our funding models and potential funding mechanisms for the cost of this Concept 7 moving forward.
Okay, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Mr. Freeman.
So just to be incredibly clear here, our 2 options are to repair or replace the concrete ramp, just not touching the barge, and we're closed for a year. Or we look at Concept 7 and implementing that, and then we're closed for 2. Is that a fair, is that what we're saying?
It's possible. In theory, and Rob or Mark, please comment on this. I would say, as was just mentioned, funding has not been allocated. With that aside, in theory, I believe planning could begin for this option, and if begun very, very quickly, there's a potential that the project could be completed sometime next year. Is that an accurate statement, Mark or Rob?
Yes, I don't think it would be finished, close to Memorial Day for a full 2022 season. But I would expect you would get to use the new facility at some point next year.
Because the permitting 8 to 10 months and all these things, it was a little dicey there for me, but okay. That was really my only question.
Commissioner Kaplan.
No real questions. They've all been answered. But if we don't start the planning process soon, Rob, how far back does that put us?
Well, I will say it's most certainly the first step in moving forward. And what it does is it gets the ball rolling on the permitting, which is one of the largest limiting factors, if you will, in way of time.
And if we elect to start the planning process now and the funding models don't work, we've at least started the process and we have the plans in hand. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that potentially could put us in better position for funding opportunities such as grants. And also, I would point out that the permitting is, I believe, a 3-year, and so it doesn't mean that we would have to get constructed immediately. There would be time if it was decided that we weren't going to immediately move to construction.
And what would the rough cost be to plan out the ramp replacement and or in conjunction with the barge replacement?
Well, this is the proposal that we're seeking consensus right now from this committee to have Smith Group provide that to us, and then we would hope to bring it to the board meeting next Tuesday. So we have to have that cost.
So is that all you're asking for at this meeting, is consensus to have Smith Group price out?
Yeah, what Smith Group would provide us is essentially their engineering and design fees and leading the permitting process for this particular option 7. And we would look for a contract that would bring us all the way to construction documents, so documents that are biddable. And then at a later date, it could be addressed depending on funding and other factors, whether we move to the next phase.
But it's so unclear, and if I missed something, I apologize. It's concept 7 plus the bolt line at this point in time.
Yeah, that is correct. So, actually, this is a great opportunity for me to point out a couple of things here. On the far left here, you'll see the various numbers and lengths. There is an opinion of probable cost. We would like to work with Smith Group to get this updated. Obviously, there have been changes. This was last done in either early 2020, and obviously there's a lot that's changed. So we would like to take that into account, and obviously, in this case, now the boat launch needs to be included there as well.
And what kind of numbers are we talking about for Smith Group, just to get this? What is it going to cost us to get the first phase of the Smith Group work done?
I don't know if Rob or Mark could give any numbers. I'm not sure if they could. We didn't have them yet, but as I said, that's what we'd be doing, is we'd be getting that proposal from them and bringing that to the full board on Tuesday. And that would be a detailed proposal bringing us all the way to construction documents.
Whatever.
I mean, for planning purposes, I tend to tell people that, you're looking at about 10%. Now, we generally like to be less than that, but that would be the kind of order of magnitude that we're typically looking at, but it may not be exactly that. But if you want to get an idea, a number in your head, then there's a fairly easy place to start. That's
about 90 grand. All right.
President Ruttenberg.
Thank you. I'm going to break this into a couple pieces. Without dwelling on it too much, can the barge, I'm sorry, strike that. can the ramp replacement occur simultaneously with the barge replacement?
Yes.
So, well,
And
but
that would actually be the most cost-effective way to do it.
well, but let me follow that through.
Yep.
Does that mean we could get the ramp operational next summer?
So if I understand you, President, what you're saying is, could we come up with a project that was sort of two-phased? Phase one would be sort of a demolition phase of some of the existing facility and replacing that with then a new ramp. And then subsequently, there would be this next phase that would put in this concept 7 at some later date. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
So
I think to get so it certainly is it is feasible to have because we talked about this earlier, it's feasible to do a ramp replacement project. To do that, we need to create this cofferdam of some kind. And so that would mean we would put the sheet pile in place to create that cutoff. And so, that would be a project, and then this would be something that could follow. It could follow later, but you have that period where you have a new ramp and very old, sort of, inadequate breakwater protection. So it's feasible to do what you're saying. It's not necessarily, there are some risks associated with it.
I can appreciate that. I can
Yeah.
appreciate it. But now the pricing here, the opinion of cost at $963, which let's just round it to $1 million. It's easy to talk about it. Does that include, that does not include the new ramp?
It does not.
Does it include the optional floating dock on the lakeside of the ramp?
I can, if you give me 1 second, I can
Yeah.
have a look.
And then at the same token, I'm going to ask our staff, given the condition of the floating dock on the shoreward side, we have to replace that too. And I don't know if that was in the cost of that was talked about earlier of 250 to 300,000.
So
I'm just-
I'll just interject just
Yes.
one thing. That floating dock itself should be around $60,000.
Oh, that's just nothing. So we need 2 of them. So that's 120 now.
So again, I don't like playing with other people's money, but if we look at what the overall cost of this is, it's a smaller portion than putting down the rocks. right?
Absolutely. I'm not arguing with that point, but again, it's still $60,000,
Yeah, it is.
which may or may not be in this 963 number for one of them. But now, given the condition of the floating dock from my own observations and what I've heard, we're going to have to replace it. No sense not doing it. So that's 2 floating docks. I'm just saying, these are numbers that I just want everyone we just got to keep generating.
Yeah, so in the 2019 estimate, there was 648 square feet of floating dock was included in concept 7. That was at a cost of about $50,000, but that has since been updated, but I,
Okay.
so that one was, so in the new number, the 1 is included.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. On this plan, I'm sorry, on the plan that I'm pointing to that just vanished,
Oh, sorry about that.
is the H pile included in the $1 million number?
Yes.
Okay, so that H pile would be the equivalent, not quite the same, but a functional equivalent of the sheet pile that you're proposing, that could be a possible barrier for just doing the ramp now.
So one of the things with this option is the existing barge is located on the left side of that floating dock. Does that make sense?
In other words,
You're
if-
moving everything lakeward.
Yeah, so the basically the west wall of that barge right now is about here. What's happening is you're expanding the width of the ramp to make room for this so you can keep it two-way traffic.
Okay. I see the issue. Then if we don't do this initially, okay, all right, I understand that. Okay, and I guess I'm going to go back to, we could have a project, as we said, that includes doing the ramp as a standalone yet integrated project with replacing the breakwater. And it's possible.
Yes, and that, as was just pointed out, you would likely limit the opportunity for something like that.
Okay, but let me just ask one other question that was sort of being asked. For us to obtain a proposal from the Smith Group, and I know that people are asking cost, getting a proposal does not cost us anything. Am I correct?
That's correct.
All right. I just wanted to make that clear because I thought there was some confusion about that from the questions. All right. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, Barney, you definitely stole my thunder. That was the exact question I was going to ask, is can they go on simultaneously, but with the boat ramp? I think, I mean, I can't speak for my other commissioners, but I've got this Memorial Day date in my head as a very, very specific goal to try to get boaters back in the water. It must be very frustrating. So let's keep our eye on the prize with that. Okay.
Yeah, and Terry, the boats want to be in the water, not the boaters.
Yeah. Okay.
Terry, I have one more question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
This is for the Smith Group. I think you touched on this and I really didn't register, so I apologize if I'm making you repeat it, but the life expectancy of the actual cement ramp, what was that life expectancy? I mean, did it last forever, or if there's a proper breakwater, or is there a limited life expectancy?
I think that when we look at those, we look at 50-year design lives on cast in place type structures like that. So,
based on the information
we'd be looking at if it was properly protected.
Yeah, so based on the information that we have, because obviously none of us were around when that was put in, is that sounds like that the actual ramp was nearing the end of its life expectancy, regardless of what happens with the barge / breakwater. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, it certainly appears that at 40 years here, with the underlying cause of loss of material through the barge that exacerbated, it lessens its life.
And if we were to go forward with option concept 7, it would have been your recommendation, regardless, assuming there was no failure of the cement ramp, that it would have been your recommendation that we replace it anyway, in conjunction with the installing concept 7.
With concept 7, I would have, if we would have gone through more final design, I would have taken a very hard look at what was going on with that ramp at that time. Saying that it's a 50-year design life, 50-year design life can go to 70 years. We said 3 to 5 years on the barge. It's made it 2 years. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And that would put it in sync with this concept 7. It looks like if you got a 50-year life on the ramp and a 50-year life on this barge concept, then, at least our grandchildren's board will be able to deal with that. Okay, so are there any other questions from any of the board members for staff or for Smith Group or anybody else that's presented today? Hearing nothing, staff is requesting consensus from the Lakefront Committee to direct staff to proceed with obtaining a proposal from Smith Group for construction and engineering documents that will be considered for approval by the Park Board on Tuesday, March 8th. Is,
RJ?
so, on Tuesday, June 8th. Yeah, June 8th. So what are we requiring here? Just, am I just going to go down the line and see what, or you want to just say aye, or what do you want to do?
I
Right?
think if you put on the line, that would be great.
Okay, Commissioner Bernstein.
Again, I always go first. As long as it doesn't cost anything for the proposal, I'm not against it.
Thank you. Commissioner Freeman.
I'm, yes, aye.
Commissioner Kaplan.
Yes.
President Ruttenberg.
Yes, with the caveat that I would like it to be clear that we have the option of ramp as standalone or as a secondary aspect of the project.
Okay, and I am also a yes. So staff, you have your walking orders now, so great.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're now moving to public comment for items on the agenda. Pursuant to policy number 2.06.14 of the Park District Policy Manual, the board has adopted and approved the following rules for public comment. Each person or representative is limited to speak one time only, unless the board president or presiding officer determines that allowing a speaker to address the board more than once will contribute new information germane to an issue on the agenda for that meeting. All comments from the public will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The president of the presiding officer reserves the right to suspend or limit the length of time public comment may occur without prior notice. No debate or cross-examination of speakers is permitted. Comments should be directed to the Park Board of Commissioners only. All comments must be civil in nature. Any person who engages in threatening, slanderous, or disorderly behavior when addressing the board may result in loss of speaking privilege and possible removal from the meeting. So we're all volunteers here, and we are listening and we are hearing you. Anyone wishing to speak will need to use the raised hand function in Zoom to indicate that they would like to speak. The board secretary will call on registrants who have activated the raised hand feature in alphabetical order. Executive Director Romes, is there anyone from the public attending this meeting who wishes to speak and provide public comment?
Yes, at the current time, we have 3 hands raised. So at this time, it would be in the order of Chad Birkin, Lisa Hirsch, and David Silgan, and then Michael Worster. So we will start with Chad Birkin.
Okay, and I just want to say before you start, is that I know that there have been questions asked on our chat, and I know that that you will definitely have the opportunity to ask your questions with the raise hand function. So with that, let's begin.
Okay, so I'm going to just allow Chad Birkin. Chad, you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see me. I assume you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, we're tag teaming. It's me and Pete Mordini. We're at the yacht club right now, so we appreciate it. Pete has some comments.
Okay, quick question. Thank you for this time here. In the past, they talked about making that break wall with a slight curve to deter the sand from coming into the boat launch. Can that be applicated to that? Because that would save us $40,000 to $50,000 a year on maintenance to dredge out that barge. And I remember those meetings saying that that was a possible thing they can do to deflect the sand, so it wouldn't be going into the barge. I'm sorry, the boat ramp, and that would save a lot of the dredging per year.
It also, at least according to Smith Group, would add some more protection to the south lot, which has been problematic.
So it might spend a little bit more money, but we save it in the long run.
That's all the comments.
Yes, and it's exciting to hear that they're going forward with this concept.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next one is Lisa Hirsch. So I'm going to allow Lisa Hirsch to speak. So Lisa, you have the floor.
Hi, all. Thank you for, I guess thank you, but obviously this is extremely devastating to the boating community, knowing that our summer is over before it really even began. So I would like to know, first off, if there is absolutely no temporary fix whatsoever. If there's anything that can be done. I heard at the beginning that basically that answer was no, but still, if there's anything that could be explored for a temporary fix, that would be amazing. Another question is, will the current boat launch owners' passes be refunded? And since we will no longer be able to use the facility, and what all alternative launch plans are, if any, are in place for us to use other facilities for the rest of the summer to launch our boats? It's a little upsetting to hear that you are planning on spending money on beautifying the North Lot and the yacht club when we have this situation going on right now. Both of those areas are fine. I'd rather see that money being spent towards this current problem. And, I don't want to relitigate the past, but I mean, we went through this huge process in 2019. There was that survey that was sent out, and we were told that the boat launch would not be included in your capital plan because of low interest from your survey. So now here we are with a facility that is wrecked, essentially. We're really hoping that this becomes a priority. I'm glad that you're going to look into a proposal, but would really appreciate if the boaters and Park Avenue actually became a priority going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Is someone going to call in David? Is he next?
Sorry, I was muted that time. David, I have given you the floor. Sorry.
Thank you. David Sogan here. I'd like to make 2 points. I like the plan for rebuilding the concrete ramp. It makes a lot of sense, but I do think there is a but that with that sheet pile on the east side, to do nothing to protect it risks wasting a lot of money, because that, the following winter, when we have ice flows, that sheet pile, leave it to the Smith Group, but I would be very concerned that even with the remainder of the rock that's there to protect the barge, that would not be enough to protect the sheet pile from the ice flows. If we were to have a particularly cold winter, and then we could find ourselves with a lot of wasted money. Second, my guess is that you're not going to want to do the replacement of the barge at the same time during the boating season, since you would have launching very close to construction. Sorry?
Keep going. Sorry.
And the third point I'd like to bring is that we'll be able to function at the yacht club using the sand ramp, and we should be able to launch at least 2 out of our 3 safety boats, our rigid inflatable boats. However, I would like to have the Park District Maintenance Group meet with some of the more technically inclined, like Chad Birkin of the Yacht Club, to work out protection to prevent the sand ramp from getting washed out. We know that it happens every fall. It just happened recently with the latest northeast wind. Fortunately, the lake level's down 18 inches, but it doesn't take much of a north wind to bring that levels up. And we really should look at ways of protecting the sand ramp. We will we're very creative. We can use the plastic tiles that we purchased, and if we have to, we'll purchase more that we can always get access to launch our boats. But it would be far preferable if we maintain the sand ramp so that's always available. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Okay, next we have Michael Worster. So I have now allowed Michael to speak. Michael?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Just a quick question relative to the sand launch and specific to the PWC. And I put this in the panelist question, but is that something that can be done? According to Mitch Carr, it can be, as long as the trailer fits into the measurements of where you can put in your boat, or in this case with me, the PWC. So I just want a clarification around that. And then the second question is, I assume WMAT is, or I'm sorry, WNECA is going to allow us to launch and de-launch with our current passes that we have. So if somebody could answer that, that'd be great.
Ryan, Jeff?
Would you like me to answer that right now?
That'd be
Eric?
great.
Okay, hold on. We're not gonna have questions right now, but we'll be sure to, I will ask about that in a bit. I have that same question. Do you have anything else, Michael?
Just the WNECA, just understanding how that's going to work.
Right. So we're not addressing the board or the staff right now, but we'll have questions right after that from the board. And I will be sure to ask that of the board, of the, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, we have two more hands that were raised from Steve Knapp and Jody Mordini. And so I will start with Steve Knapp. Steve, you can now have the floor.
Hi all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Hey, appreciate your time here. The first thing is, I think, this makes a lot of sense talking about the ramp and the replacement barge. So I just want to encourage the board to, push this and work on getting the ramp done by boating time 2022. And then, the replacement barge being in place, sort of completed project by boating season 2023. The other point I'd like to raise is that while the sand ramp is okay for some of our small craft, we really need a concrete ramp for a real safety boat with any capabilities. Now, this is true of the other boaters as well, that most of us have relatively small boats that are fairly light and low displacement. So we don't need a bunch of draft on that ramp. And these are not, heavy boats. So I'm a little less worried about traction on some sort of temporary repair. So I'd really ask the board and the staff to look at a temporary patch of some sort, whether that's small material or maybe, plate over the current hole. We're only asking for something on the order of 4 to 5 months. And we think, I feel like that's something that we ought to be able to maintain while still keeping a safe environment.
Thank you.
And then so last, as of right now, is Jody Mordini. Let's turn the floor over now to Jody. Jody, go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you for being here. So my question is, will our fire department be able to launch their emergency boats? I mean, there will still be a lot of people on the lake. And if it's any, indication how it was last year, there's going to be paddle boarders, there's going to be kayakers, there's going to be sailboaters. There are going to be, people, even though it's not supposed to be a swimming beach, there's going to be a lot of people in that area. And, I think the closest is Wilmette, but, we've had a lot of emergencies, and I think it's really important that, they would be able to have access. So that is like a concern for safety issues for me.
Okay. Anything else, Jody?
That would be it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
There is nobody else with the hand raised, so no.
Okay. We're going to get some additional questions from the board. I will call on myself first. So to keep the pressure off of Commissioner Bernstein. So I did have a question myself about our relationship with Winnetka and how that's going to work. So that'd be a great question for you, Brian.
Yeah, sure. I can start off with that. And if there's any additional details, I know Mitch has also been working with their voting supervisor over there. But I spoke with their executive director, and immediately today, we sent an email out to the voters so they can go to Winnetka, their boat launch right away, and they can use it. They just have to have proof of their decal on their car and on their boat. And they will not be charged. So they can do that immediately. And we are, with the information today, that was kind of a short-term discussion. So we're working with them for that to continue throughout the summer. We just have some details to work out because obviously our boaters sign a liability waiver for our ramp for the summer, not for theirs for the summer. So we have to figure out, if voters do want to go there, we can, somehow transfer it so that they're just boat launchers at that site. So we're working with them, and the executive director has been very cooperative and helpful, which has been great. So huge thanks to John Peterson over there and their team for their cooperation. We're very appreciative for being so welcoming to our boating community for that. So some more details will be released in the next few days once we work out some additional details. But that is the plan for now.
Okay. And I did also have a question about the emergency vehicles. I know that, I'm sorry, the emergency boats, et cetera. They do launch, they do exercises, they do rescues from that area. How does this affect that?
So the two things that I can comment are that Gita and all the city staff are aware of this. And the second thing I can comment on is that they have stated in the past that they have the capabilities to get a boat in the water by other means if they need to. Obviously, it's not as quick as easy as using the ramp. I can't speak to the details of those, so I can certainly follow up.
Thank you. President Ruttenberg.
No, I think we've covered everything.
Commissioner Bernstein.
I have nothing else.
Okay. If questions were left unanswered, of course.
Wait. Don't forget Brian and Jen.
I believe I think I'm good. I've taken care of.
I have no more questions.
Okay, thanks. All right. So if the public does have questions, we are just an email away. So please reach out to us. Okay.
Terry, there is one more hand raised. If you're still in comment, it just came up. But I think Daniel Hirsch, and I think he did comment before, but I can allow him to talk if he has new information. So I'll turn the floor over to Daniel.
Okay.
So Daniel, you go ahead. Oops.
I don't see him. There he is.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Now you may have the floor.
Thank you. Okay. Listen, I've heard it all. I know it all. I get it. I don't think you guys have been nearly aggressive enough to come up with a solution that gets us back in the water this summer. And I think there is a way to put our heads together and make it so we can have our facility for this summer. So I don't think anybody should be giving up on this place yet. And I think that if we were a little more clever and a little more determined, that we could come up with a solution that gets us back in the water. They have traction paint that will stick to steel. There are many things that could be done, but just canceling the summer for us is pretty harsh. And I think you owe us a little more than that.
Okay. We are moving on now to a Moraine Beach Pathway Project update. Director Smith to present.
I just want to say thanks to Smith Group, and if they would like to depart, unless the board would like them to stay for any other reasons.
I think we should let them go.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mark and Rob. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, so Director Smith to present about Moraine Beach Pathway Project.
Thank you very much. So last year, the park board was updated on this project, which is to address the failed pedestrian path at Moraine Park, and it's the path that leads from the upper park to the beach. And at that time, we followed up with work that Dan Craney Company had done. So previously, Dan Craney Company was hired to develop a concept for the path repairs. And so we had reported at this time last year the proposed solution, which involved construction of a boardwalk over the failed sections of path. And the project would also address drainage from runoff down the ravine slope, and also stabilizing the toe of the bluff. The park board at the time had chose to defer proceeding with construction documents for that work. And so now we're coming back because the construction documents for this work are budgeted in the 2021 capital budget. And so staff are looking for a consensus from the Lakefront Committee to move forward with requesting approval from the park board on this next Tuesday evening to proceed with a contract from Daniel Craney Company to develop the construction documents for this work. The construction document proposal from Dan Craney Company is $28,000, and there is currently $35,000 budgeted in the 2021 capital plan for this work. The estimated, and I should add that the $28,000 is a not to exceed contract. The estimated remaining cost for the project, which would basically be the moving forward with construction, that next phase is estimated at about $375,000, and that money is currently budgeted in or it's included, I should say, in the 2022 capital plan. Any questions?
I just have one question. Jeff, can you just remind me why Dan Craney was recommending a boardwalk instead of just putting something at grade, replacing what's existing there at grade?
Sure. So it's like I said, we've looked at this quite a bit. There are a lot of challenges with it, and it seems like the most effective one of the reasons would be that while we're still going to do what we can to stabilize the bluff, especially at the toe, it would allow, if there were any further movement, for it to move underneath the boardwalk. So it's less likely that you're going to have additional failures.
What would the difference in cost be if we just replace something at grade or we just repaired what's existing versus actually doing a boardwalk construction?
You know, I apologize. I don't have those costs right in front of me, but I most certainly can provide them at the Tuesday meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I think you provide that. Just when you come back Tuesday night, just, because it's been a while since we've discussed it, just why you recommended that specific proposal and what are the benefits versus doing that versus just trying to doing again, the Band-Aid situation of doing something at grade and what the difference of cost would be.
Absolutely. And while we certainly don't want to spend time rehashing things, I will also provide a little more of a refresher on the project with some photos.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a long time. Thanks.
Thank you. President Ruttenberg.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Kaplan.
No questions. Thank you again, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, with Cal's questions about refreshing us, I have no questions either. Okay, great. Millard Bluff update.
We're,
We're
not.
Is Jen gone?
Yes, we've got it.
Terry, I think we are looking for consensus to just.
Oh, I'm sorry, right. Staff is requesting consensus from the Lakefront Committee to recommend approval by the Park Board on Tuesday, June 8th. The proposal from Daniel Craney Company for construction documents for the Moraine Park and Beach Boardwalk repair in the amount not to exceed $28,000. Commissioner Bernstein.
Well, considering I'm really not technically on this committee, but since I am sitting here today, that's fine with the caveat that I like to see Bill refresh us and talk about what the differences of just repairing what's existing versus actually constructing that boardwalk.
Commissioner Kaplan.
I am on the committee. I say yes.
President Ruttenberg.
Well, since I'm not on the committee, I think it's a good idea.
And Vice President Grossberg says yes as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to the Millard Bluff update. Director Voss to present.
Good afternoon or early evening. Very quick update. So staff had met with V3, which is our contractor for the Millard Bluff slope stability. The subcontractor that's going to do the soil borings has been out this week, and I believe they're coming back tomorrow to finish that up. Once those soil boring analysis will be turned into V3, and they will provide more recommendations on what we need to do. The draft, we're expecting a draft at the end of the month, and we'll be able to do a full presentation at the beginning of July. And that's all I have right now.
Thank you for your succinctness. We appreciate it. Okay. Is there any other business from staff or from the board?
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you. Could we get an update on the Lakota group's site planning for the Park Avenue facility?
I thought we did that at the beginning.
Well, we didn't really get like, where are we? What do we expect next, and et cetera?
Okay. Executive
Jeff,
Director.
go ahead if you want to, Jeff.
Well, I will say as far as next steps go, so we are going to get more refined concept plans, and we will be scheduling a meeting with the Park Avenue Working Group for the third week of June.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll go back to the Lakefront Committee.
I met down there with the group this morning, and they're on top of it. Okay. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So move. Oh, I'm not on the committee. I can't do it.
Who is?
I am on the committee. So moved.
Can I get a second?
I guess I got to second it too.
No.
I'll second.
Okay, we're good. Then the meeting is adjourned at 5:33 p.m.
Good job, Terry.
Good job.
Everybody have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Appreciate it.